Welcome to Menopause, Marriage and Motherhood, a podcast that's all about changing the way we view midlife and bringing the conversation about menopause out into the open. Each week we share stories, experiences and inspiration. We talk to experts on how to best navigate this time of life and find out how other people have not only survived but thrived through this time. I'm your host, Karen O'Connor. Hello and welcome. Today I'm here with Louise Pieri, who is a friend of mine, and she's pretty amazing in what she does anyway, because she's still a figure skater. She's been figure skating for not too many years. But she messaged me the other week. She's done a degree in criminology, and she's also, are you a psychologist? You're doing, criminal justice.
Well,
Go on.
Yes, I've also got, I'm almost finished a degree in psychology, the undergraduate degree in psychology, as well as the criminal justice. Yeah, that's right. And you've also got a business too. You sell the most fabulous jewellery. So she's kind of like a jack of all trades. So tell me for a start, first of all, tell me about your career in ice skating, because I've seen the videos of you. You're pretty amazing. And then how did you end up, because you've also got kids. So you've been doing ice skating for a very long time. You got kids. Then you went back to university, did a degree in criminology and psychology. And then you've also started a business at the same time. Tell me all about that. Yeah. Okay, so with the ice skating, I'll start with that. I started at about 8 years of age, and I skated probably up till I was a teenager and then quit because there were more interesting things to do as a teenager, like parties and things like that. But because I'd skated, up to 40 hours a week as a child, I didn't have much of a childhood because I was always on the ice. My body never forgot the skill. So I had many, many years break, probably about 18 years. When my youngest went off and my last child went off to school, I decided to go back at the age, I might have been about 36 or 7. And I just started going for exercise a couple of times a week. And then I found when I wasn't there, I was thinking about it. And one of the coaches at the ice rink approached me and said, maybe you should do some lessons. And then I started getting really serious about it. And she put me in a competition. And I thought, it's just going to be a little club competition, a couple of minutes on the ice. And she said, oh, no, I'm putting you in the state titles. And I was like, I've only been skating for 3 months. What? So I had probably a month or two to prepare, and then competed in state titles in I think it was silver, because there's all different divisions depending on age. So I was in the geriatric division, obviously. But I won it, well, to my surprise and everybody else's, because no one had heard of me. And then I went on to compete at nationals, and I also won that. And then I continued to do that for 3 years. And then I had a knee injury and I had to stop competing. So I just do it for pleasure now.
Wow. That's so inspirational to start back at something at a later age and then be really good at it, to everybody's surprise, including your own. I'm not being patronising. It was such a shock. I can imagine, like, oh my God, really?
Yeah, I mean, even my family were like, because they hadn't actually seen me skate. My children, I came off the ice from that first state competition and my daughter was crying, tears of joy. And yeah, so it was really moving.
Wow. It's interesting. I was talking to a guy over the weekend, and he's 74 now. And he decided that when he was 72 that he wanted to beat the world record for the 100 meters sprint in his age group. And he's having never done any running since he was a teenager, and he's something like 0.7 seconds off the world record for his age group now.
Wow.
It's so motivating, isn't it? We don't need to give up just because of our age. It's fantastic. So I'm forgetting so far so quickly. Well done.
Oh, thank you. I think it helped that I already had so much experience and training as a child. I don't think I would have achieved that if I'd just taken it up as an adult.
Yeah, I know what you mean. When I got back on a horse. I think I'd had 13 years break, but I was immediately like, okay, let's go for a gallop.
Yeah.
I just knew what to do because I'd done it for so long as it when I was growing up, It's really fascinating how your body just remembers.
Yeah, there is research on that, that the body remembers on a cellular level. It's not just muscle memory, but also neurological pathways and that kind of thing, yeah.
Oh, that is fascinating. We might have to talk about that as well. Now, what did you do in your life? What made you go back and study psychology and criminology?
Well, I moved from Sydney up to the Gold Coast, and I wasn't working and the kids were enrolled in school, and I'd always wanted to go into social welfare or psychology or criminology, because I really was fascinated by why people do what they do, and particularly in the context of crime, because what makes somebody murder, rape another person and violate their boundaries, and then other people pro-social and never break the law. And the psychology behind that was really fascinating to me. So I kind of went into it without an end goal other than doing the actual degree to satisfy my own curiosity, really.
And what was it like? Did you enjoy it?
I absolutely loved it. And I think it's so much better to do it as an adult, as a mature age student, because I got more out of it, I think, than if I'd just been straight out of school. And I really wanted to be there, and it wasn't just a box ticking exercise to get into a job. I was there for the journey.
Mm. Did you feel that, because you must have been with students who just left school, did you feel that your life experience made a difference to that? Did it make the studying easy, or understanding what was going on easier, do you think?
Yeah. Some aspects were harder because there is a lot of statistics. And when I was at school in the 70s and 80s, we didn't do statistics, and they seemed to just get it. So when it came to research methodology, I struggled a bit there. But in terms of more abstract concepts, it was much easier for me to grasp, and human behaviour was easier for me to grasp because of life experience and dealing with people.
What was the bit you enjoyed the most in the degree?
I think all the different theories of crime, because the degree really is about the psychological, biological, and sociological theories of crime. And then they're not all. So there are different schools of thought where some people are proponents of sociological in isolation to psychological or biological, but I really believe that they all work simultaneously to contribute to the factors of crime. So I really enjoyed studying those theories and the history of how criminology evolved.
How did it evolve? Just give me a brief overview.
How it evolved?
Mm.
Oh, I'm not sure what the time frame is. I'm thinking like the 1500s, around that time. Started off with phrenology, and they thought that, the theories were very rudimentary, and they thought that facial features and the size or landscape of your skull determined whether you would be criminal. And so, it might be someone with a protruding forehead may be more likely to be criminal. And we laugh today, but they didn't obviously have all the science that we have now. Although in terms of like evolutionary criminology, Darwin, in his book, The Origin of the Species, in the last chapter, I think it was, he really pointed to the implications of his theory to psychology, which was really not well developed at all at the time.
Let's go back to Darwin. I didn't realise Darwin had actually said anything about criminals. What did he say?
Yeah. He didn't actually say anything about criminals. He said that his theory had implications for the future of psychology. I mean, that's not verbatim, but he did point to that, and it has. And then because psychology, I don't think, really took off until the 50s, 60s, and then 70s. But, so he was prophetic in that sense.
Wow. So you sent me a message the other day and you'd written this article, and thank you so much for sharing, because that was the highlight of my day. You'd written this article about toxic positivity. And I just went, oh my God, I've experienced that so many times. And I've spoken on the podcast. I had a few people on to talk about toxic relationships, but never talking about toxic positivity. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
Okay, I actually had never really heard of the term myself, but I now realise what I was calling it was delusional positivity. But then I realised, as I started to unpack what was really going on, I was like, actually, somebody's already coined a term for this, and it's toxic positivity. I was exploring the same concept, but in my mind, I was just calling it delusional positivity. And I have noticed in the last, particularly with the pandemic and social media, that this notion of toxic positivity has become more and more pervasive, and these feel good, only good vibes, statements. And just with the advent of influencers and marketing, obviously, people don't want to see negativity all the time, and it is useful for influencers and marketers, and hence why it's all over Facebook and social media, Instagram and all that. However, for me, so I had noticed it had come into my consciousness, and that there was this false reality being perpetrated. I think that's fairly obvious. Everyone recognises that at our age anyway. But young people still believe what they see. But it also has permeated like personal relationships. And I had a conversation with someone about domestic violence and about the perpetrator of domestic violence. And their response was, everyone has their stuff to work on, right? And I thought, well, domestic violence really isn't stuff. I think that's an oversimplification, an overgeneralization. It's not all good. And so when someone's stuff is violating the rights of somebody else and harming them, you can't just explain it away with the whole good vibes scenario. And I felt like what I was saying was being minimised, dismissed, and it prompted me to start to think about why I was feeling that way and what it was I was actually feeling, because I felt quite angry. And then I started to explore why am I feeling that way? And I realised that I was feeling rejected and also that I was catastrophising. And I think that toxic positivity tends to do that to the person who's on the receiving end of it. That was really what prompted me to write my little blurb. I was really just venting and unpacking my own feelings of what is actually going on here.
It's really interesting, though, because as soon as I read it, it really struck a chord with me, because the scenario it took me back to was probably about 15 years ago now, and a friend of ours and his new partner, and I'm saying new partner, they'd been together for years at this stage, but he'd had 2 kids with his previous wife. And his wife was stopping him from seeing the kids. And he wanted to send them to a very good private school. And his wife said no because she didn't want them paying for their school fees. And the guy's new partner was going, oh, but it's all good. It's all good. And I said, no, it's actually not. It's actually, it's not a nice situation for either the boys or their father. It's not fair. And it's okay to feel angry and rejected and whatever else you feel. It's actually okay, because unless you look at those things, they're going to stay there. And you've got to allow yourself to feel those things. She's going, no, you don't. We just got to look on this as it's all good. It's all good. And I, like you, I got really cross. But I did feel the same. what I was saying, I can't think of the word. I felt like what I was saying was being judged. And she said, I'm the most judgmental person on earth, so I can't throw that one at anybody. But it was also just dismissed. My belief that, well, no, I think we've got to experience those emotions or they're not going to go away. And I'm not saying wallow in them, but experience them, acknowledge them, and then let them go. It's not good. And that lack of acknowledgement was just completely dismissed. And I think that's what you're saying as well. That was your experience too, wasn't it?
Yes, that was exactly how I was feeling. And I felt like the implication was that I was a negative Nancy and only looking at the bad. But I can't think of any good in domestic violence. Can you? I mean,
no. And but there's also a difference between understanding that everybody's got problems and going, yeah, that's fine, but this is not acceptable. You're making a choice here. We've all got a choice. You're choosing to do that, not acceptable, whether you see your choice or not. Still not acceptable.
It's like a head in the sand type mentality, or a see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil mentality. It's like it's nothing to see here. It's all rainbows and unicorns. I'm going to stick my fingers in my ears and go la, 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 And the problem is if you are only ever of a positive mindset in all situations, irrespective of circumstance, while failing to acknowledge negative thoughts and emotions, denying them, rejecting them and avoiding them, you will be hit by a tsunami. It is a bit like if you don't, it's like grief. If you don't go with the waves of grief, if you don't go through the waves of grief, you will be hit by a tsunami eventually. It's going to come back and bite you. And it's healthy to have negative thoughts and emotions. I'm not saying you shouldn't be positive, but where this thought process took me was I was thinking, well, it's not you, Louise. You are able to feel negative thoughts, think negative thoughts, and feel negative emotions. These have developed for a reason. We as humans, from an evolutionary perspective, have developed them for a reason. And that when I started to unpack that and think about that, I was thinking, fear, for example, which would be classed as a negative emotion, protects us from predators. If we were to go back to our hunter-gatherer Stone Age time, fear protected us, and it still does. If you don't feel negative emotions, you are optimistically overestimating the likelihood of a good outcome and underestimating the likelihood of an adverse event. So fear is there to protect us. That's why we developed that. And it's also motivating. Anxiety is motivating. And so I kind of went through my own self-talk, and hence I wrote you that little blurb, my rant.
Yeah, but it was, and I was going to say I'll put a link to it, or I'll put it up on the page or do something, but that's up to you. Let me know whether you want me to do that.
That's fine, yeah.
What is the impact? Because we see it. I never go on Instagram, for example, for this reason, because I don't like the constant looking, it's all about looking good and isn't my life perfect and hashtag living the perfect life. And some days I get out of bed and the day's crap, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm generally a happy person. I'm a positive person, but I can't be 100% like that. And I find that if I'm surrounded by that kind of positivity, that where everything's good, always look on the positive side, it actually undermines my self-confidence and my self-belief, and it undermines my optimism as well, because I'm start making it wrong about how I'm feeling right now, and so I stay in it, because what you resist persists. So that's my way of looking on it. That's what's your take on those kind of things. How do you deal with it? What's your thoughts about the impact of this toxic positivity?
Yeah, so with like Instagram and social media, I intellectually understand that they are doing it for a reason. It's conducive to selling and marketing and portraying a certain lifestyle, because usually it's linked in with selling an item or a product or a brand. If that brand can sometimes be the person itself. So I can see past that. And sometimes those, it may not be just a picture of how wonderful somebody is, but it might be a little positive affirmation. And those little positive affirmations may be timely, and it may be just something you need to see at that time. And you're like, I feel a little bit better or whatever. For me, though, actually, I derive more comfort when I hear people's stories of misfortune. I know that sounds perverse. Maybe I am a negative Nancy, because I think, yes, I've experienced that too. A bit like when I sent you that blog and you were like, that resonates because I'm glad I'm not the only one. I've felt that too. And so what happens with the constant bombardment of positivity is people think, oh, gosh, I don't feel that way. That isn't my life. And so that's why it has that negative impact, because it's unrealistic to be positive all the time and only have good vibes and, that kind of thing. It's unrealistic and it's unhealthy, because we do have negative emotions and we should feel through them, because it's cathartic. And there are actually studies on the adverse side effects of positivity. I don't have them with me and I can't rattle them off, but I know there are studies that support actually what we're saying, because when I started to look into it, I was like, oh, okay, I've just come up with this kind of theory, but there's actually data that supports this notion, what you're saying.
Yeah, and I also find a lot of it, some of the people can be quite passive-aggressive about their positivity as well. And I find that difficult to deal with, because how do you deal with somebody who's on the face of it being very positive, but there's something going on in the background? And it's actually,
you're just being gaslit by positivity.
Yes, I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah, that's right.
Yes, because you can't challenge it, because it's like the smiling assassin. You can't challenge it because what they're saying, the words that are coming out are positive, yet you know deep down that the motivation is not altruistic, that you've just been done over, poked. And that's where it's insidious. And that's hence why it's called toxic positivity, I suppose. But it's insidious because it's like beware of wolves in sheep's clothing, because on the surface you can't nail them on it, but I just said it's all good. It's and so you can't argue with that, but you've been done over. Yeah,
you do, and I think for me it was all about being able to give myself permission to go, I don't like this. And that was one of the things your article did for me. I mean, I've been saying I don't like this anyway for a while, but it was like, oh, fantastic. I've actually got some psychological, some authoritative backup on what I'm feeling, because that's important to us as well. Because when we do get gaslit and that kind of thing, we start to doubt ourselves and go, well, am I really a negative Nancy? Like, what the heck is going on?
Well, I don't think you're a negative Nancy. There's a difference between being a realist and a negative Nancy. I think there is, where you were saying like that you felt gaslit, because it's covert. When it's wrapped up in optimism, it's covert. And that's where it's hard to take on. When someone's overtly rude, then you can name it and shame it. But when it's covert like that, it's much harder to deal with.
How do you deal with it? How does one deal with it? Not you personally, but how have you got any ideas for how people can deal with it? I need some, because I just start yelling. I
think that to speak directly about your feelings. look, I know you're saying A, B, and C, but I don't feel like that's really what you're saying. And this is making me feel, invalidated, dismissed, whatever it may be. And you have to talk about how it makes you feel. And you can't assume that they are going to get it, because they may not be right. They may not be right in the head. Never assume that someone is neurotypical, because they won't always receive it the way you think they should.
That's actually a really interesting point, because as soon as you said that, my mind went to a couple of people, and I thought, for all their positivity, they're actually real narcissists, like borderline narcissists, and they would not understand what was being thrown back at them.
Yes. Well, it's the perfect mask. That whole, only good vibes and positivity and all that. Because, it's the perfect cover for a narcissist.
I hadn't thought of that, because we do tend to think of narcissists as certain men who used to run certain countries. We tend to think of it like that, but there's an abundance of them in the online positive mindset, make loads of money kind of. There's lots of them. And when I think about it now, I'm just going, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think that is real. I'm glad you said that, because I have suspected this myself. It's difficult to measure, but I always think, you've got to trust your instincts. And some of those people are using, I don't think it's genuine. This is the thing. It's disingenuous. And I think that's what's resonating with you, is that it comes across as disingenuous. And that's where it doesn't sit right. And you feel like, I've been gaslit, or I've been done over. And when the answer to every question or the answer to every situation is only positive, it's just, you think, there's something not right here.
The other place that I was thinking of was when these online coaches, or I don't know what you want to call them, influencers, let's call them influencers because it's not a coach, when they say, ignore everybody else, we're all okay over here, and don't let the naysayers get to you, and don't do that. Yes, I understand that, but my instinct tells me that there's something very negative in that at the same time. It's very, I can't even think of the word. Do you know the kind of scenario I need, and what are your thoughts? You're a psychologist. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not actually a psychologist yet, but and that's a long journey. But it's superficial. Is that what you mean? Like it's very superficial.
But it's also it struck me as like playground mentality. Oh, the cool kids are all over here in our corner, and we're all doing okay. And unless they agree with us, we don't want anything to do with them. Just ignore them, because we are the bee's knees. We're the special ones, the chosen ones. It kind of leads into that scenario too, or it can do. Not always.
Or it's like there is no alternative. So if you're not on board with, I may not be, tell me if I'm not heading the right path, but if you're not on board with all this, everything I'm saying and doing and posting, then there's obviously something wrong with you, because my life's fabulous, and so it is, and they will espouse all these kind of generalized positive statements, and they may not land with you, but it appears from the 20,000 followers that they have that it lands with everyone else, and therefore you must be the problem. There's something wrong with you. Is that what you mean?
That kind of thing, because I know I did it myself, and I had to learn through going through that kind of thing. You want to be part of the in crowd, but you kind of know that it doesn't fit with, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I know now it's some kind of gaslighting, but it's,
so it doesn't fit with your value.
Yeah. And it's the same, it's that insidious kind of toxicity that you can't quite put your finger on it, but that no, this isn't right. and I'm speaking from personal experience, when you actually look behind the scenes, when you get the opportunity to look behind the scenes, it's like, oh, this is all fake.
Yeah. It's all icing and no cake.
Yeah.
Because there's no substance to it.
Yeah.
There's really no substance to it underneath it all. It's all just a veneer. Oh, I believe. I mean, that's my opinion. I haven't proved it, but instinctually, I think this is just a veneer. And the fact that you feel compelled to constantly do this makes me suspect that you actually aren't happy or what you're portraying to be.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good, and I think that where I was going with it is part of me knew that I wasn't aligned with it. Some people will be, that's fine. I knew I wasn't aligned with it, but I didn't have the self-confidence or the experience to go, no, that's not for me. So, and I think that's something we all need to learn with this toxic positivity and everything, is that we know, deep down, we know whether we're being gaslit, whether we're being bullied, whether we're being manipulated, we know.
Yeah, and I think so. And, I once read, and I don't know who wrote it, if you have to say you are, you aren't. Because it's a lot of it. I think where you were going, I just had a thought with the narcissism aspect of it, is it's constant, pervasive self-aggrandizing, but it's also, and I think this is where I just run with this. I think that is where it doesn't sit right, because it's also a humble brag. So they are showing, they're self-aggrandizing, but also doing it in a kind of humble brag at the same time. And that's where you're like, hang on a minute, this is not consistent and it's incongruent.
Yeah, it is something like that. I read this fabulous book a while ago called The Mummy Bloggers. And it's about this. She's got I think Holly Wainwright is the author.
Okay, I can't see. Oh, yes, Mummy Bloggers. That sounds interesting to me. That's right up my alley.
It's fantastic because it's 3 female bloggers. One of them is the working mum, one of them is the green alternative mum, and the other one is the perfect Instagram mother. And it looks at their actual lives and who they are really. And I could just relate to it so much because I know somebody from each of them. So
it's a tick in every box.
Yeah, it was fabulous. And she obviously knows a lot about that online space because, and the perfect Instagram, perfect one, it did everything that we've been talking about in this thing. Everything's perfect. It's always positive. It's blah, blah, blah. It always looks good. She's a perfect mother and she's got these 2 perfect kids and she does all this, but she actually had a nanny and a PA and all sorts of things. And none of that was ever let on, acknowledged.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of impression management going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for us mere mortals, those of us who don't have enough self-belief, they take that on as reality, and then I mustn't be enough as I am, because they're not really seeing the reality of the fact that she's outsourced all her parenting and all the and her kids are probably miserable.
Yeah. So because I'm going to wrap up because we've been talking for a fair while now.
You can cut any of them.
I'll cut it back.
It wasn't useful.
It's actually been a fabulous conversation because we've kind of flowed from one topic to the other, which is just brilliant. And I love conversations like this. You've been fantastic because you've just answered all my questions and I've put you on the spot a fair few times.
Okay, good. Yeah.
How do you spot when positivity is toxic? Is there a way of spotting?
I think you've done a really good job of spotting it, for example, as you explained, through mummy bloggers and social media. But one-on-one, I'll give an example. say you'd lost your job and you're in the middle of a pandemic and there's not a lot of jobs available, and you are being vulnerable and explaining to someone, I've lost my job and there aren't many around in my field, and I'm really worried because I'm burning through money and I won't be able to pay the bills. And they come back with, oh, it'll be okay. You've got this. Just think positive thoughts. Well, I think you've got a really good case for toxic positivity. And I'm not saying that the person is intending to be toxic. I'm saying that it's often well-intentioned. When people don't have something meaningful to say, they will draw on these pre-scripted positive statements in the hope to make you feel better. But what it actually does is diminishes your feelings of despair. Because they're overgeneralized, that person doesn't know you've got this. That person doesn't know that you'll get a job fairly quickly because they don't know your capacity, your tenaciousness, resourcefulness, and ability to find a job. And, you've got this, one will come, think positive thoughts. Well, the secret power of wanting is not going to bring a job and land it in your lap. You can't, yeah.
It's interesting you use that analogy because my eldest daughter was stuck in Melbourne. She's just moved up here. So she had 2 years of lockdowns. She lost 2 jobs. She was in a bad place. And it took everything I had when I was on the phone to her not to do that, not to try and chivvy her up, and go, no, it'll be okay. I just had to keep going. I got it. Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? I got it. And that was all I could do because that was the only way she could offload. It was the only opportunity for her to offload. And if you hang on to it, it's going to stay hung on to. So I just wanted her to let it all go. She still hasn't quite let it all go, but she's getting there. And, so that she can actually experience something else. And it goes against everything that I want to do as a mother because I want to make it better.
Yeah. I think that's why I say I don't think not all people say it with bad intent. They're intending to make it better and make the person feel better at the time. But really, what they want is someone to listen to them and understand, and instead of just platitudes. Because they're empty platitudes, because thinking positively or, for example, or you've got this or it'll be okay, they're not measurable. They're just subjective, abstract concepts.
And there's no acknowledgement of what's actually going on for the person. I think that was
emotionally
the thing for me. Yeah, like I got it. I feel the same way. Got it.
Yeah. Then you did the right thing.
But I hadn't even thought of that. But that is toxic too. That not being listened to and, being, oh, you'll be okay. It'll all be fine. Everything will work out in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, will it? I don't know. So I just think it's pie in the sky type thing. And one thing that I've learned through the therapeutic process is when people are offloading like that, they don't want a fix. They just want to be heard. And it's helpful really just to reflect back to them what they're feeling. Paraphrase back to them kind of what they're feeling. Oh, I know, I understand, you must feel terrible, and hopeless right now, and that type of thing, so that their feelings are validated, and that they know that you understand how bad they're feeling.
Yeah,
I think that's more helpful. Yeah.
Thanks so much for talking to me today. It's been brilliant.
Oh, thank you for having me. I hope I did okay.
You did great. So I'm going to put that article on the webpage. Did you want to put a link to your social media or something? You don't have to.
Well, my social media is personal social media, and then I have my business, but I'm not promoting that through this because what I was doing was just like blah, and then I just happened to send it to you because I thought it might be something you were interested in. And And then you invited me to talk on it. I was like, oh, I haven't thought it through that thoroughly, but okay.
The last few weeks have actually been hilarious because Louise has been in a flat panic about, she's going, I'm not an expert. You don't need to be an expert. It's a conversation and it's really interesting.
Okay. Oh, dear.
So I really appreciate it because I know that you had reservations about talking about it because you didn't feel that you could, but it's been brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. I didn't feel that I was qualified to talk about it.
Yeah, no, you are. You're good.
I guess I'm not self-aggrandizing enough.
No, and no toxic positivity here from either one of us.
Oh, thank you for making it so easy.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for joining us this week on Menopause, Marriage and Motherhood. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite player, and while you're at it, we'd love you to leave us a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would be amazing too. Be sure to tune in next week for the next episode, and remember, if you're busy thinking about what you can't have, how on earth are you going to enjoy what you can have? See you next week.